Hello Internet, welcome back to my channel, and today we are going to go over how to make Kylo Ren's hood. I'm super excited for this. This one should be pretty easy, so yeah, let's get into it. So you're going to take your hood pattern from before, and you're going to line it up with the center fold of the fabric. So that means where the fabric folds over at the top here, that's where you're going to place the top of your hood. It'll make it to where you don't have to cut out two pieces of this, and you also won't have a seam at the top. You don't want to have a seam at the top. You want it to be smooth and seamless. Now you are going to take your lining fabric, place it over top of your burlap, and you're going to cut out 2 in your burlap, but only 1 in your lining. 2 in burlap, 1 in lining. The reason why I wanted to have 1 lining with 2 sides of the burlap is because the actual hood has both this pattern on the inside and the outside, and I wanted the strength and also the opacity of having a black lining fabric in it, because if you put 2 burlap together, you can still see through it very well. But if you have the burlap and the lining, even up against the window, you can barely see through it. I wanted you to not be able to see through the hood into the rest of it. One part because that's the way the actual costume is, and the other part is because my mask is not a complete helmet, it's just a mask. Now you are going to take your lining and sew it to only 1 of your burlap pieces. So you're going to take all your pins out if you haven't already, lay it out flat, pin it to your burlap, and sew it together on the outside seams, all of them. Now you're going to take your lining sewed burlap over top of the plain piece of burlap and pin it all together, making sure that all sides are even. Burlap has a tendency to stretch when cutting, so you're going to end up with a couple sides that don't necessarily fit. Those sides you're just going to trim off after sewing. So what you're going to do first is sew only 1 line of your burlap and your lining burlap together, just along 1 top line, not your side lines, not the small ones, the top one, only 1 of them. Don't sew both of them, just this one. That's it. Now that you have sewn this internal seam, you're going to take the burlap and fold it over. Now you're going to sew a very thin line across the seam, so that way it stays down. And this is going to be the front of your hood that faces out, so your face will be in here. Now we're going to finish the bottom edge here. So what you're going to do is clean up anything that's left over like this and make them all even. So now that you have your front all sewn together with completely closed edges and it looks all nice and clean, we're going to work on this portion here. So as you can see, I've pinned this down and it goes around like this. You're going to sew a very thin line all the way to the end here, so it gets a nice little rounded edge here. You're going to just cut this off after you're done sewing. Now you're just going to sew along this bottom line, not sewing them together, just sewing the pieces of fabric together so that way they don't come apart when you're attaching your cape/scarf thing. Here comes the tricky bit. This is where we're going to make the scarf and the cape thing. These were just bits of burlap that I had left over. This one, at its longest point, is about 1.5 feet, and at its shortest point is about just the span of my hand, so it's about 6 or 7 inches. Then I had this other one lying around. It doesn't really get any bigger or smaller, and it's about 8 inches across. The length of them I did cut down specifically. The length you're going to want for this is enough to where it wraps around your neck and drapes down to about the middle of your butt in the back. That's about how long mine are. I have a very short torso, so I'm not going to give you the measurements of this because my body to leg ratio is not even. So I don't suggest doing my measurements exactly. Just get a strip of fabric and just wrap it from one shoulder across the other shoulder with a bit of a drape, and then throw it over your back. And when it reaches around the middle of your butt or so, it can be a little longer, a little shorter, it doesn't matter. That's about how long you want for the fabric. I'm using 2 pieces, so that way there's a lot of clump in the front of the scarf. Alright, now here comes what you're going to think is the weirdest part. You are going to take your scarf pieces and lay them out with the back facing the back of the hood and the front pieces facing the front of the hood. And you're going to take one on each side and pin them down to the base, leaving a little bit open in the back on either side, and sew it down. Alright, everything is now sewn on, and the way to put the hood on and make the scarf and the cape bit is really easy.